This episode is brought to you by TaxAct. Don't do your taxes alone. Join TaxAct's National Admin Night. Admin nights are social gatherings for getting through your to-do list. So get ready for a night of fun, finding deductions, and filing taxes with TaxAct, where you can file your federal and state return for just $49 through April 8. Let's get together and get them over with. Visit taxact.com/admin-night for details.
Welcome to The Secret Life of Cookies, where we try to solve the world's problems through the miracle of carbohydrates, one recipe at a time, with host Marissa Rothkopf and her dog, Bosco.
Oh boy, settle down, settle in, or grab the dog leash and head for a nice long walk, or head to my Substack for this week's recipe and bake along and listen. I'll wait. My guest this week is the amazing, and I know I use that word a lot, but Wajahat Ali is amazing on so many levels. Oh, we talk about his new best-selling book. We take on racism, Republicans, racist Republicans, oxymorons, and what it's like to grow up in America as a Muslim. I hope you enjoy the conversation, the insights, and the real truth about pistachios that we uncover. I hope you would enjoy it as much as I did. A housekeeping note, if you would be so kind as to leave a positive review on Apple, share the pod with a friend, subscribe to my Substack, Bosco and I would be grateful. And that poor puppy, he has to wear his cone of shame for another 2 weeks. You could do it for the puppy. I know it would bring him joy, and thank you so much. I would like to welcome you, Fareed Zakaria, to the show today.
Thank
it's
you.
Wonderful to have you. And I think you and all your, folks, really, it is Wajahat.
My name is Sanjay
Ali.
Gupta. My name is Sanjay Gupta. I'm here to give medical advice and to ask that you all mask and vaccinate during this pandemic. You could see me on CNN with my toned abs.
Yeah,
not me. As you can clearly tell, not me.
No, actually, you look quite schlunk, as we would say. For those who are listening at home, he looks quite schlunk.
Yeah, I will take it. I think that's Yiddish for moderately overweight, but handling it with grace.
No. It really means you're very quite soigné, slinky,
Nice.
as opposed to growing up in a family like I did, where I would learn phrases like Kugelhund ist gesund, which means to be round, like a kugel, is healthy.
Wow.
Yeah.
For us, it was, they were more blunt. They just said, yo, you're very healthy. And healthy meant big boned and big bone. Or they used to look at you and say, mashallah, which translates to as God wills it, but mashallah is given as a compliment. Or sometimes not as a compliment. You have nothing good to say. You're like, oh, that baby that was hideous. Mashallah. So they used to look at me and go, he is very mashallah. And I used to wear husky pants. So the trauma and the joy of blunt immigrant parents commenting endlessly about your weight, I share it.
Thank you. And my parents were really positive about it. That's the thing.
Oh, that's great.
But I didn't look like the super thin, waspy girls we were like the only Jews in my town, and we had books in our house. So it was there's a lot of stuff going on there.
So you're like the nerdy Jews, the nerdy round Jew surrounded by these thin mint, white waspy girls.
Exactly. I was basically like a relative of Ralph Lauren's. But all these girls, no, I wasn't. But all these girls look like the Ralph Lauren ideology. Ralph Lipschitz, as my mother used to always pronounce it. Lipschitz. Anyway, I thank you very much for coming on today. You have just written what the world is calling, and the world should be calling, a best-selling book.
Please.
Oh, no, but more. Go back to where you came from, which, before we go any farther, I want to ingratiate myself to you and say, I love this book so very, very much.
Thank you.
Every single person, once they're done listening to this podcast and, maybe left a few likes on Apple Podcasts, not Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I would love them to download I hope you get as much money from downloads, because the Audible version, it's just lovely. Thank you for spending the week with me. We had a great time. We went on dog walks together. We laughed. We cried. It was great. And hearing you read it hearing you do your dad's voice, hearing you do Bill Clinton's voice, just everything about it. It was obviously your words. You are a good writer and you convey things well in the written word, but also hearing you say it was the way to go. So I heartily
thank you.
recommend
I
that.
appreciate it. It was my first Audible. And it's interesting. I know they just lock you in a room for like 4 days and you have no idea like what's going to be happening. And the only audience I had was like the recording engineer. So I used just to turn to him like, dude, is this working? And then he's like, listen, we record the most boring books. This is like a gift. I'm like, thank you. And I'm like, all right, you're my link to the world. Because if you're wrong about this, this is all going to go to hell. But I appreciate that's what it is, right? It's a conversation. You write a book and you realize you're having a conversation with a reader that you oftentimes don't see. And it's such a trip to then meet someone who says, oh yeah, I read your book and I know about your life. And you're like, oh yeah, I wrote that book for the public. Why did I do that? I'm a what?
Totally.
What was wrong with me? How come no one stopped me?
Because we wanted to hear more and more and more. And you invited us. That's all I have to say. You invited us and I had a very good time. I had a very good time. As you know, this is a very sort of strange show where we talk about politics and the world and what's going on. And we also bake because
excellent.
At some point in the middle of the pandemic, I was like, I can't cope with what I'm seeing on the TV without having some sort of outlet. And so I hope
but you know, isn't that interesting? I'm new to cooking. The same thing happened to me is that during the pandemic, somehow I got inspired to finally start cooking. And I got my mom's, and like I never cooked anything before. I was so nervous and worried. Like I cooked the basic stuff, but I'm talking about like South Asian dishes that we grew up with. And I got these recipes from my mom, and then I got the hang of it really quickly. And then like now I cook for my wife, and I ended up like cooking like 6-course meals a day. And like people are like, how'd you do that? I'm like, I don't know. It comes very easily to me. I find it to be very therapeutic, and I enjoy seeing the smile on my wife's face. And I give food to people, and they're like, you're surprisingly good. And I'm like, I'm learning. I'm a grunt. Just have faith. You know, typical immigrant kid. I'll get better. And they're like, no, exactly. No, we're giving you a compliment. It's tasty. Like, you gave us free food.
No, I cannot have a compliment. It is against my.
I apologize. I apologize for existing.
Exactly. Please take my food anyway. I'm sorry. I have that same sort of feeling, and I kind of missed the conversations that you had over the kitchen over the kitchen table or over the kitchen island. I'm pointing over my island, which is sort of where you're sitting. And I wanted to be able to kind of parse and take down and sort of emote about what was going on in the world. And
wonderful.
So luckily everything is much better now. The pandemic's over. We have a Democrat in the White House. So everything's good.
Yeah. Now this is just an excuse for gluttony. And there's no reason for us to binge eat out of like deep underlying existential fear that our democracy is under constant assault. As we're recording today, the Republican Party officially said that the violent insurrectionists who tried to overthrow our election are just, quote, ordinary Americans with, quote, legitimate concerns. So that's good to know.
So the audience knows if this were actually being recorded, like for video, I would now pick up the entire cake and eat it just for comedy's sake, because what the heck? I was going to ask you if on your bingo card for this week, you had Rudy Giuliani, The Masked Singer. Was that on your bingo card? Yeah.
That was not on my bingo card. And I'm a person who tries to, I have a deep imaginative well for the absurdity of America, right? Like I have a lot of faith in my country to do outlandish things. I mean, we did, after all, elect Donald Trump, a vulgarian, to the White House. But to see Rudy Giuliani being unmasked as one of the contestants on the Fox show Masked Singer, which I have yet to see.
Me too.
That's like, wow. That's like, the bar is so low. Like, I'd love these double standards for women and people of color, that you too could overthrow or try to overthrow an election. But that's okay. Just for the sake of ratings, we're going to give you money to be a contestant on Masked Singer.
Right. Whereas Whoopi Goldberg has to spend 2 weeks in like hiding in her basement, and then after that she has to come out and probably has to like apologize and do all sorts of things.
During Black History Month, the shortest month of the year. Oh, actually, that's a good point. I didn't pair that together, but I should have paired that together. Yeah. So here's Rudy Giuliani, who literally gets rewarded and paid, and then Whoopi Goldberg, who, like, I think everyone, even her own co-host, even Whoopi, said, "Hey, I'm sorry. This is where I'm coming from. I had this American construct of race, and I've been informed and educated why the Nazis saw Jews as an inferior race and insubordinate people and didn't care about like religion. And that's why they were targeting them. And now I've been educated. And the next day she uses it as a teachable moment. And ABC News says, let me make a thing, something educational and positive worse on Black History Month. Let's silence this woman for 2 weeks. But by the way, Meghan McCain and everyone else, free for all.
Go for it. And the idea that, and especially because it was based on her idea of race, which I don't know, as an African-American woman, she might really have a very strong sense of what it means to be a member of a race, because this country has not been so,
kind.
Kind. I don't suppose you read, somebody posted one of the Virginia history textbooks that was used in Virginia during the 50s through the 70s. And
what do they say? Something just atrocious?
I can barely repeat it because it makes the bile. It's a fight between the words coming out and the bile coming out, but it's basically how happy the slaves were and how, and they were slaves. They weren't, obviously no pleasant term, nicer terms, more real terms like enslaved people. But the slaves were so happy, and their masters worked to make their lives better. And one of the things, they'd get at least 2 changes of clothes a year. So that was nice, including a straw hat for summer and a wool cap for winter. And also, they sometimes would pass down the clothes when they didn't want them anymore in the big house to the slaves, because they loved the finery.
Ah, nice. And you don't have to go back to the 50s. A couple of years ago, if anyone's listening, you doubt this, go check a Bill O'Reilly Slavery Fox News, where he had a segment before he was, of course, resigned for the multiple sexual harassment scandals that Fox paid on his behalf. He did his whole segment where the slaves weren't treated that bad. In fact, they were okay. And so this was just a couple of years ago. And I remember when I took my aunt pre-pandemic, she visited, I took her to, George Washington. We were in Virginia. So we saw the George Washington's house. And even then, one of the folks, there was like a tour. And one of the folks were like, well, but were the slaves treated well? And then the lady who was like the tour guide, I mean, there were slaves, but I know, but were they treated well? Like this mythology of this benevolent white slave owner, like anything that like questions white supremacy makes us so uncomfortable. We need to like sanitize history, that it really wasn't that bad. I mean,
it wasn't that bad. And also, honey, if you don't feel happy reading about the fact that you were a white person who may or may not have owned slaves, just you let the Board of Education know, and you don't have to read those terrible, horrifying books.
Yeah, you can read Fountainhead instead and bore yourself to death.
Oh my God. And so,
too soon?
Too soon it is.
Too soon.
Seems like a good solution. This was a busy week in racism. So thank you for coming to us here.
I am a race hustler who hustles every day. I'm being the race pimp that I am, according to the right wing. And, it's a tough job. And I appreciate you noticing and observing that I had to take time out from my busy race hustling schedule for you.
Thank you so much. But I'm going to give you the opportunity to actually talk some more about racism, because, it's really kind of been a banner week for racism. We've had Brooke burnings. What else? We did have
the complaints. I think it was a complaint. I want to say Alabama. I could be wrong. The complaint against Black History Month, because parents are complaining about that. Stop the Woke Act in Florida, which then inspired the Texas Act. Mouse being banned in Tennessee because some of the people didn't like the ending.
And they don't like naked mice.
Yeah.
Do you remember? I mean, go back to your days as an adolescent boy. What would seeing a naked mouse have done for you? I mean, come on.
Yeah. I would have changed my pronouns. Pictures. I would have worn a dress and changed my pronouns.
Probably. And who knows which bathroom you would have used.
Yeah, I would be confused. And so, I mean, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing like just a full scale assault, especially during Black History Month. Oh, let's not forget, since you're doing a cataloging list, open dog whistles about President Biden's yet to be even named Supreme Court Justice nominee, where apparently we're freaking out about affirmative action because he said he'd nominate a Black woman, but no one seems to care that Trump nominated 3 white folks and explicitly said that he would nominate a woman, and we all knew it was a white woman, made no qualms about it, but that's okay.
That's completely okay. And also, I mean, as long as she reads more than the J. Crew catalog, I think we're okay, according to Senator Kennedy. The other thing that also happened was there were like 14 different states across the country, this fine country, passed, I don't know if they're laws or at least guidelines for how you can teach Black History Month. And you couldn't, you can't do things like say, oh, Jackie Robinson broke the color line. Can't explain to you what the color line was though, right? Yeah. Tulsa, Oklahoma, something happened there. Can't explain to you what happened there.
And, you know, it's all connected, right? I think it's connected. You know, the story, the myth, the narrative is connected. The reason why they're freaking out over 1619 Project, which is, if you really just step back and look at this, you're like, here's Nicole Hannah-Jones, who came out with a New York Times book review cover on 1619. Okay. They have lost their damn minds over this because it challenges the myth of the American dream, where the white man, the pioneer, came here, bootstrapped himself up, right? Worked hard. Like Rick Santorum said, there was nothing. Maybe there were a couple of natives, but we came here and with our manifest destiny and our God's good fortune, literally gave fruit to this earth. And we were the benevolent whites. And sure, it wasn't perfect, but hey, we gave the Blacks an opportunity and we gave the Asians an opportunity. And that is America. And if you challenge this mythic, incorrect, romantic notion and replace it with actual truth, then you have to confront this thing called white supremacy. And you have to confront the systems that are still in place that oppress the rest of us. And you have to confront inequality. And then you have to confront your role in either condoning it, perpetuating it, or choosing to reject it. And instead of doing all that, let's just ban the books.
It's much easier. In America, we like quick fixes, right?
Quick fix and supersize. Supersize racism, quick fix to our discomfort over racism.
Oh my gosh, we've got it. I think this is the t-shirt, supersize it. And then there was also one that stood out to me were these so-called Nazis in Florida.
Oh, Nazis were marching, that's right.
Yeah, they were marching. But first of all, I heard what they were saying. And the truth is, my eyes are too close together. I mean, so I can't dispute that. And the other thing is that lovely woman who works for Ron DeSantis as his press person also did mention they could be Democratic operatives.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
So I don't, they probably, we can probably knock those off the racism list because they might not really have been Nazis.
But, you know, and we, maybe not. But the interesting thing was also that you've had Paul Gosar, Arizona Republican congressman, who openly has gone and given a keynote at Nick Fuentes' white nationalist conference, taken a photo with him, pals around with the Oath Keepers. And then you have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who believes in Jewish space lasers causing wildfires. And both of those individuals have not been condemned by the Republican Party, but been celebrated. And of course, you have Madison Cawthorn and also Matt Gaetz, who are palling around with these white nationalists, people who also are friendly with the neo-Nazis. But don't worry about that, or Charlottesville, or the folks who chant Jews will replace us. Just worry about Antifa, Black Lives Matter protesters, and alleged Democratic operatives who might be posing as Nazis. Oh, yeah, right, and Ilhan Omar's hijab.
Oh, my gosh. You got to ease up on this. And speaking of Democratic operatives, what about censuring Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney?
Oh, yeah, that happened today. Well, that also happened. It's been a busy Friday news dump. Like, I feel like the racist gods just took a dump on all of us this week. They were waiting, like they ate a lot of burritos and beans and biryani and like fried chicken and they ate like a lot of McDonald's and like candy, ice cream, and they're lactose intolerant and they just kept it.
And their mothers were very unhappy because they were really holding it in.
Yeah, they hold it in and they're like, wait for it. Black History Month, let it all out. Let it all out. And then it's like the Blazing Saddles campfire scene. But yeah, because I completely forgot that one also. And it's like, oh my God. So, you know, I said this a couple years ago. And I remember when I used to say this on television, I think on MSNBC or CNN, this was like after Trump was elected. They used to give me like these quizzical looks. I remember even before Trump was elected, I said this on BBC News Hour. And the guy heard the term white supremacy in his brain. Like,
oh God.
He's like, what are you talking about? And I said, we're witnessing the death rattle of white supremacy, which has turned into a death march. That's very key. The death rattle has turned into a death march. And if you look at, you know, everyone's tried to do these euphemisms. economic anxiety, racial trip ups, racial flare ups. We played the game of taboo for like 4 years until maybe 2019, 2020, when we finally started calling it out, which is fascinating. It shows you the discomfort this country has of ever talking about racism, right? And I said that it's not economic anxiety, it's cultural and racial anxiety. They're afraid of being replaced. And every single study since the 2016 election has shown that the main reason, not the only reason, the main reason why people voted for Trump, even the people who went from Obama to Trump, was due to cultural anxiety, this fear of being replaced, this fear that the American dream and myth, the narrative they had of Leave It to Beaver and two genders and black and white men on top was now being threatened, and they were losing power. And if you've been in power your whole life, what does equality look like? Equality looks like oppression. But for the rest of us, we're like, oh, there's 2 women now on the board and there's 1 brown person. Yay, we got invited to the party. But to them, they're like, why do these 2 broads and this darky come and take our spot? And that's the tension right now. That's what's happening.
That's what's happening and has been bubbling up, as you said, all along. You have kids, as we were speaking, and they lead a lovely life playing Lego and doing good things. And your daughter is now in remission from cancer or healed of it, which is an amazing thing. You have pinned on your Twitter the moment where she meets the guy who donated the liver to her. And I could just like think about that now. And it just, I get all sort of,
you get the feels.
I get the feels and a lot of like, I stop being able to speak coherently. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing to watch. And it is so restorative in my faith in all things, or at least a few things. If you're in need, anybody out there, if you're in need of a little bit of restorative uplift, that video will do it. That's a wonderful thing.
I kept it there for a reason, because precisely for that, like it's a good reminder for not just myself, but everyone else of a good story. Oftentimes Twitter is a hellscape. It's like the world's id. It's a repository of like, it's like, come be the worst version of yourself. And even me, like you have to be self-reflective. Like I was thinking about this yesterday. I think about this often. Like I need to get off of social media. I need to make enough FU money where I don't have to rely on social media anymore. And I could just like sit and like write novels like I always wanted to, because I worry about what it's doing to me sometimes and what type of behavior gets rewarded, right? Like it brings out oftentimes the worst version of yourself. And then I feel like with this hellscape of a timeline that we're living in, that you just gave you just spent like the last week. We haven't even talked about the month. You just did the highlights of the week. And even then we missed like a whole bunch of stories, right? I feel like that's an important story to show that selflessness and generosity and kindness can lead to a young girl living. Sean was then an anonymous donor who answered the call like about 3 years ago, when I announced that my then 2-year-old daughter had stage 4 liver cancer, and it spread all over her liver. She needed a full liver transplant. It was getting a hairy situation, and person after person stepped up, and like just every complication that this poor girl could go through, she went through, and over 500 people, mostly anonymous donors, stepped up to help this little girl. And it's important because some of those donors they literally told me, I hate everything you tweet. And I'm like, everything? They're like, everything, but I'm praying for your girl. I'm like, even the Lego set, I hate that too. And so, I'm like, I hate your politics, but I signed up to be a liver donor. And it just shows you that sometimes some people can do good. And this liver donor, Sean Zahir, is a young guy who just happened to live like 15 minutes away from us. I never met him. Happens to be Muslim and Pakistani. We had no idea. His wife, Rida, followed me for the last couple of years because apparently I went to North Carolina several years ago and gave a speech. Since then, she followed me on Twitter. He's a Luddite. He's not on social media. She was just sitting on the couch reading these tweets. He took the phone from her, went through my Twitter thread and said, O blood type, donor. I've given blood. I give marrow, Pakistani Muslim, preferred, but not necessary. Okay, great. And then quietly he did it. And we found out through accident from a mutual friend, the day of the surgery, he messaged me. He goes, my friend Sean, I think he's the one giving his liver to your daughter. Pray for him too, because he's in the operating room. I'm like, who's Sean? He goes, oh crap, I don't think I was supposed to tell you. And I'm like, well, if his wife is there, can we connect? And so we got our phone numbers and we started texting, and I bumped into her after the surgery as we were both waiting in the Georgetown commissary.
Oh my God.
And that's how we all knew each other. And then when it came to Nusayber ringing the bell, and for those of you who've never gone through cancer, hopefully, inshallah, you never will, ringing the bell is when you're declared cancer free. And then we gave her like a Supergirl costume, and that's the video. And then he happened to be off from work that day. So he comes in and he sees her ringing the bell, and then she runs to him and he picks her up, and somehow we got it on camera. And it's just this magical moment.
Right. And he like bounces her up and down like he's like her uncle. It's
isn't
the
that
sweetest thing. It really, it still gets me, even if you described it again now. Let me pause for a second and talk about cake, because cake is sweet. And I just want to talk about what I'm doing here, because then I want to talk about, and so you can think about it while I'm talking, but you have 2 children?
Three.
You have 3 children. You have
I got a pandemic baby.
Oh, congratulations. But you have to apparently raise them in this world that we are all living in. And did your parents raise you with any sort of like, okay, you small Pakistani American kid, when you go out into the world, be prepared for this? Are you going to do this for your kids? Because my father was an immigrant. He was the one who was like, this is my cat trying to walk on the cake.
She knows a good thing. She knows a good thing when she can smell it.
Yeah. And he knows I give him treats. Hitler had been like, you guys aren't so nice. If you can get out, why don't you leave? And so my father left and he came to the United States.
Oh, Hitler was that? Oh, that was very nice of Hitler to say that.
It was very thoughtful that way.
That was very thoughtful.
Please leave everything behind, because I don't want you to have to carry a lot on your journey.
I would prefer, Jews, if you don't mind, for the Aryan race to rise again. It would be really lovely if you could, just kind of depart.
Exactly. Oh, you're a little reticent? I have a plan. Anyway, and so my father never really said anything about like, okay, when you go out there, people are going to say things to you. It was only in reaction. Like, why does what do you mean I can't go to like CCD classes and stuff like that? And it's like, no, you're a Jew, you do different things and we're different. And we would react to things on TV and be like, oh, it's not good for the Jews. But you
say that a lot nowadays, unfortunately, exactly. In America.
Ooh, it's not good.
Like every week, unfortunately.
Anyway,
this can't be good for the Jews.
It's not going to be good for us. But my mother would say things like Jackie Mason. Remember, he was like this horrible comedian. I would be like, Jackie Mason is not good for the Jews.
Oh, see, your mom is she knows what's up. She knew what was up.
Totally.
That guy was so racist. So racist.
Was he? I never was allowed to watch him.
But he was funny too. But then he was racist also. He was like so openly racist against Muslims and Arabs. You're like, damn, man, Jackie Mason. If you weren't so racist, I would really enjoy your comedy.
And yet, maybe it's just not enjoyable because he is a horrible racist, or was. Anyway, I am making something that I'm, hoping will bridge the gap between Pakistani Americans and German Jewish Americans by bringing together. This is a very solid cake. You can see it's a beautiful bundt pan, but I made a sort of vanilla, very heavily scented kind of dense pound cake. And I filled it with, you get a nice streusel filling in a cake. I made one sort of based on the scents and spices of chai.
Ah, I love it. And I was drinking chai throughout this entire podcast.
It's like homemade a great chai thing. I'm going to then glaze it with a chai glaze.
Oh, so that should be delicious.
Chai and heavy cream, but inside it's chopped up almonds and pistachios. Ooh. And then we have ginger, cloves, some green cardamom, and what else? Other spices like cinnamon.
This is basically like every immigrant uncle's dream cake. Because like all ethnic uncles, and this includes Jews, like love pistachio. And
love almonds. Pistachio.
Yeah, the pistachio is like crack cocaine for them. They're like, pistachio, put it in everything.
My father loved pistachio ice cream. Why is that?
Yeah, that's weird. Pakistanis, Turks, they love. It's like that generational thing, like this, like the old school uncles. If you want to, like, I don't care who they're, if they're these ethnic uncles, you want to win them over, like anything pistachio, they go crazy. And I love pistachio too. I like that's why I realized it became my father. Because I'm like, what type of gelato should I get? Pistachio. And then all of a sudden I'm like, how about mango too? Yum, 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 yum.
And your kids are like, I want the bubble gum.
Yeah. Your kid's like, what's wrong with you, old man?
Exactly.
Give me rainbow sherbet.
Sherbet. Oh, that was really popular when I was little.
To answer your question, it's very interesting. I was thinking about this while you were baking and answering the question. I was dreaming of chai cake. it was interesting. My parents didn't otherize me, but they kind of just didn't care either, in the sense that they named me Wajahat. Obviously, they don't care about me blending. They didn't teach me English, even though I was born and raised in America. Like, I talked about this in the book. You realize when you're other when you first go to school. That was the first time I noticed, because I spoke Urdu, brown-skinned kid with 3 generations growing up in the same home. They're speaking Urdu. We fasted when we had to fast during Ramadan. We pray when we have to pray. We watch TV. And they kind of just, like when I asked them, like, how come you didn't teach me English? They're like, look, you learned. And so, they're like, whatever. And they're like, how come you put green stuff in my kebabs? My mom's like, because it's delicious. And it was. And so it was one of those situations where there was like immense pride in who we were. And they kind of just didn't really care about assimilating. And also I was protected in the sense that I had the family unit, parents, grandparents, aunts, cousins. And we kind of just flowed and integrated the way we wanted to integrate. Like we did the religious stuff, we did the cultural stuff. I was an American kid doing American stuff, but you find out when you're the other. I found out immediately when I was in school. My parents didn't have to remind me, which was interesting. I'm glad they didn't. But they did mention, like, look, you could just tell the comments. Look who gets on TV. Look who's the hero in the movies. Look who gets elected. Look at the double standards. And you kind of realize, oh yeah, we're Muslim when we're brown and black people in Mexico. Like, you just know. You're like, okay, the hero's the white dude.
Yeah.
Who's going to get off scot-free? Who's going to get the longer prison? Oh, speaking about the weekend racism, the woman who got 6 years.
6 years.
Sentence for voter fraud because she didn't know that she was ineligible to vote. And then she voted, and then the prosecutor and the judge gave her 6 years. Meanwhile, I'm in Virginia, and Glennie Youngkin's eldest son tried to vote twice.
Exactly. Didn't you say something about he's white and he's going to get off scot-free?
Oh, yeah, nothing happened to him. He's fine. He's fine.
Nothing happened to him. And Glenn Youngkin, though, today did sort of had a little run-in with people. I have a daughter who goes to university in Virginia, and so I'm much more aware of what goes on in Virginia now. I think that we all should be. And Glenn Youngkin got yelled at today at the supermarket because he wasn't wearing a mask.
In Arlington, which is close to where I am, which votes very blue, and everyone else was wearing a mask, and a woman was like, yo, read the room. and he's like, how come you're not wearing a mask? He goes, everyone makes choices today. I mean, ridiculous, man. Ridiculous.
Ridiculous human being. You were talking about how your parents didn't really bother to assimilate in heavy duty fashion. And I think in your book, didn't you talk about like your friends coming over for hamburgers and the kind of hamburgers your mother made? Or did I completely
no. So my parents, my parents just didn't care. They're like, friends are coming over. They'll enjoy eating dal and chamal. Dal is like lentils and chamal is rice. And they'll enjoy eating saag gosht, like just hardcore traditional desi stuff. And they're like, and they ate it. They're like, oh, this is very good. And then maybe they'll order like a pizza for me. And then the funny thing, I'll never forget this. We went to a tailgate. I'm not a tailgater, so I got invited to a tailgate, San Francisco 49ers tailgate. So you got to bring something. So everyone's bringing hot dogs and meats and barbecues because my friend's father, is a season ticket holder. So my mom makes me these kebab patties, homemade kebab patties, right?
Oh my God, yeah.
And to me, they look perfectly normal. And like they these round, flat, like little burger patties. And so I remember I brought them and I was like kind of proud of them. And then everyone's like, why is it green? I'm like, isn't it always green? And they're like, what the hell is that? And then, they go through the food, and you know how it is with food. If food's out there, and they're like, let's just throw it on the grill. So they threw it on the grill and it smelled delicious. So then one adventurous soul ate it. And I remember this. I'll never forget. After he ate it, he's like, whoa, this is good. Then another person ate it. And then my kebabs were the ones that got destroyed the first. And everyone was like, this was awesome. I'm like, told you, mother effer. Told you. Got to put the green stuff in it.
And let that be a lesson to all of us. Try the stuff with the green stuff.
And now the green stuff, for those who don't know, is hari mirch, which is like a type of perhaps sometimes a serrano pepper, and maybe sometimes some cilantro. That's all it is. But like, apparently I had no idea that green stuff was like exotic. Like I didn't know. Like I thought everyone put green stuff. And then you later realize Americans don't put green stuff.
No, but we should.
Unfortunately, to their detriment.
Exactly. And that's why we need to learn. And apparently, let me just point out to you, you actually are an American and you put green stuff in your hamburger. So, or you should, you can. And so maybe we all should.
Yeah. Fellow Americans, you have permission to put green stuff in your burgers and give it a little bit of a kick and a nice little aromatic smell.
You write in the beginning of your book, or I'm going to say you speak to me when you were in my ears. you respond to some of the lovely letters that I think you got from some of your super big fans. That's how you kick off
massive fans. Massive fans.
Massive fans. And I just wondered, just give the folks at home who haven't had the chance to start your book kind of a taste of what one of those letters would have been like. Because I want to know if those started off as like, you got letters like that, and then you drove around just ranting to yourself and finally turned it into, comedy copy.
So the books, I have fun with the book, and I try to kind of subvert the expectations of a memoir. And instead of just starting with a once upon a time, I start with hate mail. Like, I just like the title of the book, just like a friggin' cannon, just go. And and so it's like, hey, Assalamu alaikum, may peace be with you. Go back to where you came from. Fan mail number 1. And I think I give you like 5 fan mails. In the first draft, I had like 8. And then they're all funny. But then some of my editors like, maybe 5's enough. Watch. I'm like, okay. And so the ones that I chose were the first 2 that I chose were the ones I get almost every day. The one I get most common, a common refrain is go back to where you came from. And it's so common now that like, it doesn't even bother me or affect me. I just I don't even roll my eyes. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. And so the fan mail is the first one's go back to where it came from. The second one is the number 2, the ones that I get the most, which is go F a goat or a camel. And I'm still to this day, I joke about it, but I'm really fascinated. Like, why is it only goats and camels? Like, they're really obsessed with these. And like, the animal kingdom is diverse and large. There's a cat, a beetle, a horse, elephant, but tigers. Goats and camels. Yeah, tigers. Why not tigers? But goats and camels. So I list those fan mails and I give my response, and then the response is kind of a foreshadowing of my response to bigotry and hate, but also the way I choose to respond to some of the effed up stuff that happens in America, but also in my life. And so the choice is oftentimes that when terrible things happen, you have every right to rage and you have every right to be sad. But often, if you notice, and I'm going to do I did this analogy in the book, I'll do it for you. We're the old decaying sacks of flesh who can recognize this antiquated pop cultural reference. But like, people respond like Daffy Duck. He gets upset, he gets angry, he gets anxious, right? He's always constipated, but the animal always drops on his head. But I chose to respond like Bugs Bunny. And people forget, if you watch those cartoons, that Bugs Bunny's always chilling. Like, he's just minding his own business. And Yosemite Sam and Elmer Fudd are always messing up his day. They're chasing him. He's like, look at those cartoons. He's sitting there eating his carrot in his little bunny hole, reading a newspaper, and Elmer Fudd just has to mess with him. And so what Bugs Bunny does is he responds, but oftentimes he uses their traps against them. He uses wit and humor. Instead of beating them up, he gives them a kiss. He plays with them. And at the end of the day, he gets the carrot, the last laugh, and the last word. So that's how I tried to answer some of these horrific, racist, ugly emails I get on a daily basis.
I think that's a brilliant approach. And I always like Bugs Bunny way more than Daffy Duck, who is really so annoying. How are you going to deal with like your children going out into the world, as George Bush used to say, as small brown children?
Yeah. I think about it a lot. It's one of those situations where someone asked me this question recently, like, oh, Muslims are doing much better now than after 9/11. And I said, okay, yeah, the bar was very low. But yes, we have more representation. You see more of us on television. You see me releasing this book. You see, if you look at the polling numbers, there's people who are like, oh, you Muslims, you weren't lying about anti-Muslim bigotry this whole time. Look, Trump did the Muslim ban. I'm serious. That's what it took. It takes usually an act of horror for us to recognize the horror that was underneath our nose the entire time in front of our eyes. And so, yeah, there's a tilt towards this improvement, right? But at the same time, we have an entire political party and conservative movement where the backbone of the movement is forged with racism and anti-Muslim bigotry, where there's literally no punishment. In fact, you get rewarded. Look at Lauren Boebert. Look at Ben Carson. Look at Donald Trump. It's right. You can say anything you want about Muslims. No one will ask you to apologize. Look at Ilhan Omar, the crap that she gets, regardless if you like her or don't like her, because she's Muslim and she's black and she wears a hijab. She was originally a refugee. She is the manufactured boogeyman of the right. And you can say anything you want. And then even Democrats throw her under the bus because, oh, she's toxic. What will our white base say about her? They don't like her, right? By being close to her, we get tainted. And now you compare it to Republicans, you could be as ugly, vicious, anti-Semitic, racist as possible. They batten down the hatches, they circle the wagons. Even when they're asked, do you condemn Paul Gosar and Marjorie Taylor Greene? They go, nope.
Nope.
Which means they probably condone it. And so in this environment, I'll give you one example of how this plays out with kids. A few years ago, a friend of mine who now, I think the kid's 6, but she was pregnant. We're at a restaurant and she goes, what should I name my son? We have to give him a name. We want it to be a Muslim name, but also a name that won't make them the target of hate and discrimination. How about Adam? Adam can be Adam. I mean, Americans like Adam. And I sat there and we were all talking so casually. I'm like, wait a minute. Do you guys realize what's happening? We're self-policing and censoring our unborn children's name to protect them from hate. This is not normal, right? And so in this situation where I have 3 kids, I decided to be like my parents. I gave them 3 multisyllabic names: Ibrahim, Nusayba, Khadija. Like these words with weight and meaning and history, and they're brown skinned. And we're raising the Muslim, whether or not they choose to embrace the faith, that's on them. But at least the values, I tell them, and my wife tells them as much as possible: be kind, be generous, be decent, love who you are, love your roots, but realize you're one of many. We live in a diverse country, and you go to a school, and there's some people who are Catholic, and there's Christmas. So we tried to explain Christmas to them, and Hanukkah. And we tried to explain to them that some people are white, some people are black, some people have 1 parent, 2 parents, right? But this is our unit, and this is our values, and this is what we're teaching you. And my son and my daughter know, Baba, every time we go to the supermarket, Baba, that's alcohol. We don't drink alcohol. We're Muslim. I'm like, we don't drink and we're not supposed to because it's bad for you. So try not to. Plus it makes your breath stinky. Like, yeah, Baba, I don't want to touch it. And then Baba, we don't eat pork. I'm like, yeah, some people do, but we don't. We stay away from it. Yeah, we eat halal. So the thing is, like, yeah, you're an American just like everyone else. You're also Muslim. Take pride in your roots, but at the same time, what happened with my daughter recently is she's this beautiful, the Nusayba, the one who survived cancer. Late August, she looks in the mirror and she goes, Baba, I want light skin tone. Light skin tone is more beautiful. And I'm like, no. Because my wife and I have done everything. We thought we created a barrier, a fortress against whiteness, the dolls, Moana, Princess and the Frog, brown skin, black skin, like everything. And we couldn't protect her. And of course, like so many kids, especially young women, she internalizes the otherness, right? As a 5-year-old. Yep. And despite all of our attempts, it seeped through. And so we doubled down our efforts. And thank God, I wrote this about in the New York Times in November. She finally said, I love my brown skin. And we're like, oh, but you realize it's going to be a lifelong effort. And so we can only do as much as we can to protect them, to give them a sense of confidence, not arrogance, to make them proud of their roots, not chauvinistic about it, and to make them love themselves and love the way they look in their culture, even though this country and one political party aggressively hates them and says, go back to where you came from. And the final thing I'll say is I'm going to tell them, and I said this before, that you have every right to dream ambitiously and audaciously. This country belongs to you. And don't be content being the model minority who just takes the appetizer and says, thank you. Go for the appetizer, go for the main course, go for the cheese that you can't eat because you're lactose intolerant, but friggin' eat it. Go for the chai tea, go for the coffee cake, go for everything. Yep.
And then ask maybe for more.
And then more. And then not only that, my hope is, I've written about this, my hope is that the kids, what we teach them, I hope, inshallah, and they're good kids, they're kind kids, is that once they arrive at the table, the job isn't done. You have to expand the table in America. And then you have to see which community is getting beat up and then bring them to the table. And that's, if you really look at the arc of US history, the table and the narrative has always had to stretch, and the rest of us have always had to push against so much weight, against the forces that literally, bringing it all full circle, are trying to restrict the narrative, restrict who gets to be the protagonist, and literally erase the rest of us.
I think on that note, we should eat some cake, because I think that is it's an uplifting message in a time where, my next question was really going to be, but how do we push back against the forces that are the Republicans? What is the next step for us who want to make sure that, who can't believe what we're seeing, even though it's been going on forever? But, the idea that Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't get censured no matter what she does. And yet Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger are being censured today.
For what? Well, let's just repeat it.
Yeah.
Simply because they said, you know what? A violent insurrection that takes over the U.S. Capitol and almost results in our deaths is not a good thing. And maybe we should investigate it to make sure this doesn't happen again. That's it. That's the only thing that they both agree upon, right? They're like, this is wrong. Liz Cheney voted with Trump 93% of the time. Kissinger, I think, was 95% of the time. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they said a violent insurrection is a bad thing, that has now essentially gotten them kicked out of the party. Adam Kinzinger openly said that I have no chance of re-election. He's not running again. And I don't think Liz Cheney is going to win if she runs again. This is freaking Liz Cheney.
Right, exactly. Think of her father. I mean... Yeah.
This is like one of the most right-wing stalwarts of the conservative movement who now has been excised simply because she decides to put country above a violent insurrection. Just goes to show you what a dangerous place we're in. We're in a dangerous place. Like democracy is barely surviving. And so you have every right to worry. But at the same time, what I tell people is we have the numbers. And the problem is the moderate majority is flabby. And we're dealing with a highly organized, incestuous, zealous minority. And if you give me a choice between a zealous, committed minority versus a flabby majority that has the numbers, give me the zealous minority. They'll cut, as you just baked, they will cut through us as if we're like hot butter.
Yes.
That's my fear.
It's a reality. I would say.
But we have the numbers and it ain't over until it's over. So I refuse to give up.
I'm not giving up. In fact, I'm just going to work harder to make it.
You got to work harder.
Work harder. I'm going to work on my abs. I mean, now that you've made the point about my, I mean, I get the point about my flabby middle, but thanks. No,
I have a flabby middle. It's some of my favorite friends have flabby middles. Some of my best friends are flabby middles.
Exactly. And I hope when other people read your book, they also have that same sort of knowing chuckle when you talk about husky sized pants.
Oh gosh.
And Walter's clothing
Toughskins.
Store.
Oh, did you have husky also?
I can't say they were husky, but they certainly, like when I went in.
They were roomy.
Yeah, not Rooney, but
roomy.
Yeah, roomy. And I went into this Walter's clothing store, which was a boys' clothing store, and I couldn't. And they had some clothes for girls, and the thing to have at that moment was corduroys, like thin little corduroys.
Yeah, it just took me back. It took me back. I know exactly what you're talking about.
They were like, no, you can't wear those. You need to wear these sizes. And it wasn't husky, but it was the boys' size.
So you and I have empathy. The funny thing is I don't know if I mentioned this in the book, but I talk about husky pants and the enduring joy and trauma of our memories of being the husky kids. Every time I mention husky pants, no matter where I've gone in the world, it's part of the story or speech. Every time I brought it up, every time without fail, afterwards, someone comes up to me, they look over their shoulder, and they, in low, hushed tones, they go, I also wore husky pants. And then they just walk away.
Yeah.
About to cry.
About to cry. The pain I felt when you go to, I guess, like the market with was it your grandfather?
Yeah,
or your uncle who wants to buy you, he'll buy you whatever you want. And what did you pick?
Michael Jackson leather pants.
And how old were you?
5. And then they were too big, and I wore them to try to impress this girl that I liked. And then they had no belt loops, so my mom came up with the ingenious idea of using pins. And so I wore this fat kid wearing these tight but overlong leather pants to friggin' kindergarten. And then I stood there in the middle of the playground waiting for her because she used to come down with a radio flyer. And then she came down with a radio flyer. And then I felt a gust of wind. I'm like, it got chilly. And I looked down and my leather pants were on the floor and everyone was pointing and laughing. One of the many transformative stories of my childhood.
Which you can read in the latest copy of Go Back to Where You Came From.
And other helpful recommendations on how to become American.
I can't recommend the book highly. You also have a new podcast?
Oh yeah, thank you. We actually, I'm the co-host of the Democracy-ish podcast with Danielle Moody, and it's about like some of the stuff we've talked about, like how do we preserve our democracy and our sanity, which are under constant assault from the forces of fascism and stupidity. And so that's the podcast, about 35 minutes a week. And Danielle and I just try to keep it very real and very blunt about the BS that we're witnessing, and try to give you a space so you don't feel like you're being gaslit or going nutty, and also hopefully provide some solutions, but also give a narrative that oftentimes is, excised. Like, for example, of the topics we start off talking about, like, how does this impact Black communities? We actually talk to Black people, right?
Cool.
And give you the insight. Like, how does it impact immigrants and Muslims and the rest of us who are still having asterisks next to our name? And I think that kind of expands the narrative and the perspective of this thing called America. And I hope, give us a listen. I hope it's interesting and informative, and at the very least gives you a fresh perspective.
Definitely. And I hope this cake, I'm sorry I can't share it with you. If I could,
it looks fantastic.
I would. Thank you so much for coming on.
I had so much fun. This was lovely. You're such a great host. You have a warm spirit. I appreciate your excellent chai tea combinations. And thank you for listening to my audiobook. That makes me happy.
Thank you to Wajahat Ali. Please grab a copy of his book. Please listen to it on Audible, and I promise you will not be disappointed. You can find me on Twitter. Be kind, be well. Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. No matter how you do game day, on the couch, in the crowd, or manning the snack table, Athletic Brewing fits right in. With a full lineup of non-alcoholic beer styles, you can enjoy bold flavors all game long. No hangovers, no buzz, no subbing out for water in the second half. Stock the fridge for tip-off with a variety of non-alcoholic craft styles available at your local grocery store or online at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, fit for all times.